Yeah, well, we sort of thought we'd just start with yeah, just maybe a brief overview of your testimony. I think we've both been treated with lots of interviews that you've done and have a really great insight into your testimony. But for sort of new listeners, new watchers, we could probably give a super brief summary of it and then go on from there. I think we've both got some interesting directions that we think we can move in with the conversation.
Sounds good to me because what I enjoy is Q&A.
Cool.
I've done my testimony hundreds and hundreds of times.
Yeah, I
And
can imagine.
one time I was in Texas at a TV studio for them to interview me, and the guy said, "Well, we want to hear your testimony." I said, how long do you want?" And he said, "Oh, 1 minute." Get it?
Yeah.
I mean, so anyways, I gave him my testimony in 1 minute. How many minutes do you?
Wow. Well, yeah, 1 minute will be good, but that's too short.
You said a
I'm,
brief testimony. Are you talking about 5 minutes or 20 minutes?
well, do you know, I'm so excited that, Howard, that you like the idea of just questions because there's a huge difference between Pete and I. Pete is very brainy, very clever. He'll ask you very, very sensible questions. And before Ade very kindly sort of said, "Look, why don't you chat to this amazing man called Howard and do a podcast?" My first ever, I might add. We scuttled off and did various questions. And you're going to find Pete's questions are brilliant and will really challenge you. And I'm looking at my questions, and I've got as far as what's your favorite food? If you had three, if you had three wishes, what would they be? And then my mind got even more holy, and I started thinking about a program that we used to have in the UK called Grumpy Old Men, which I love because I'm much older. And it's basically a whole lot of old men who talk about the things that really bug them in life, and it's
Yeah.
tremendously funny. And I
Did you ever
wondered
see
what.
there was a really good movie with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon called Grumpy Old Men. It was wonderful. I really related to it.
Yeah, it's so nice, isn't it, to have humor on those bugbears.
Yeah.
So I warn you, there's going to be very random questions coming your way.
Yeah.
Well, you got the right person over here in the U.S. because I'm a grumpy old man.
Well, I've
Oh,
just
my wife just yelled yes.
yeah. Well, my wife definitely agrees with my me on that, and I don't know what the speed limit is where you are, but they've just dropped our speed limit to 20 miles an hour in the city, and I can assure you, when you're driving at 15 miles an hour and you're in a hurry,
Yeah,
everything becomes bleak.
Easy to get
yeah.
grumpy. Yeah.
Anyway,
Cool.
back to
So
you.
yeah, no, we'll just start with that. We'll start with yeah, as you know, as brief as you're comfortable with, and then we can get into questions, Howard. But
Okay.
yeah.
So do a test. You want me to do a testimony?
Yeah, well, just share your testimony because I think that's the underpinning of it's been the
Okay.
underpinning of your ministry, and then we'll go into questions and we won't not say we won't dwell on it because it's an incredible testimony, but we'll move on to, as you said, there's lots of footage of your testimony and move on to maybe other things that it will be interesting to hear your perspective on.
Okay, and that'll give me time to think about what my favorite food is.
Amazing, amazing, cool. All right, so I'll start with a brief introduction of the podcast, say who we're here with, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Sweet.
I was born in 1946. My dad served in the United States Navy in Pago Pago, New Guinea, in Naval Air Supply, which means at Pago Pago, New Guinea, they had a big harbor where aircraft carriers would go in and they would resupply them. That's what he did for 3 years during WW2. He was a Lieutenant JG, and when he came back from the war, he was a completely changed man. He told me many times he hated his time in the Navy and he hated being in New Guinea. And My wife said he was just absolutely unrecognizable. And she didn't mean physically, she meant the way he was. Um, anyhow, that's important because my father was an extreme narcissist, and he was very malevolent. He was verbally abusive and physically abusive every day to my mother, my two sisters, and to me. And that's the household I grew up in. One of the things that I enjoyed during the week was my sisters and I would get dropped off at a church, and we would go to Sunday school. And I loved Sunday school because they were really kind and nice. And in Sunday school, besides Bible stories and prayers and stuff, we did a lot of crafts, and I loved crafts. So I loved church, loved Sunday school. And as a result of that, I really thought of myself as a Christian. And at night, when I was a little boy and had nightmares, I'd pray to Jesus, and the lions and tigers and bears would disappear. So Jesus was my rescuer, my savior as a child. When I was 12 years old, I really thought that what I wanted to do in life was to go into the ministry. And I got baptized, which I remember and was very meaningful to me. When I was 15 years old, I asked my minister, who I was friends with, if I could have a private talk with him. He was a graduate of Harvard Divinity School, and I don't know if you Brits know what that means, but Harvard Divinity School had made the cover of Time magazine in the early 60s with a big cover that said God is dead. And that came from Harvard Divinity. 6-page article about what they were teaching at Harvard Divinity School.
Wow.
So anyways, so we had our talk. He told me that it was, Christianity was basically some really nice myths and fairy tales, none of which was true, but it was to make us a better people and to be kinder and nicer to each other. I walked out of that conversation 100% disillusioned with my Christianity and started searching philosophy. I began with Plato and Aristotle, and eventually moved my way up to Martin Heidegger, Sartre, Camus, and I decided that I was an existentialist. And I'm sure you understand that that means I was an atheist. So I pursued my goal, which I wanted to be an artist, but the only way I could really make a living as an artist was by being an art teacher. So I pursued my goal. I worked my way through undergraduate school and graduate school, and got a job as an art professor in Kentucky, which is in the sort of central part of the United States. And at that time, I had a wife and 2 kids, 2 little kids. And so my life was about my career. Period. Stop. End. My life was about my career. My family, my children, everything else was secondary to that. And all I wanted to do was to be not just a successful professor, which I was and became the department head and all that good stuff, but more importantly, exhibiting in galleries and selling my work and submitting artwork into juried shows and winning prizes and things like that. That was my life. I can spell it out for you real simply. Me, M-E, and basically to hell with everything else. And it worked. I was very successful. I became a full professor at the age of 26, which is unheard of. I was winning prizes and awards. I was named Kentucky Artist of the Year and got a $5,000 check. There was only one problem with all this. There was a big empty hole in the center of my being. And I called it my melancholia. My mother's family were all immigrants from Finland. And I love the Finnish people. I've been there. I've been to Finland 4 times and spent a lot of time with my Finnish relatives. And if you do any study about Scandinavians and particularly Finns, the word melancholy comes up a lot. I just figured that by nature I was very melancholic. The downside of the melancholia was late at night, after spending hours with my buddies, drinking at a bar and laughing and, talking really dirty, I would be driving home alone. And all else I could think about was that I wanted to drive into a bridge abutment and end my life. I had a lot of suicidal thoughts, and they scared me. And sometimes I even, started the approach to committing suicide, and then I'd back out at the last minute. So, the bottom line is, if you said to me, Howard, are you happy? I'd say, screw you. Of course I'm happy. What do you think? I got everything I want. Mm. The truth would be, no, actually, I'm miserable and I want to die. There's a lot of people like that in this world. How you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. And in reality, they're doing terrible, right?
Yeah.
Lots of people like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that's who I was when I had my near-death experience. Sorry, that's my phone.
Yeah, give me your pad.
That's all right. That's okay.
Take my phone away. When I had my near-death experience in 1985, I knew in my head that when you died, that was the end. Like the movie's over, the screen goes black, right? That's what death is. I thought all intelligent people knew that. And all of my friends who were all college professors, they were all atheists. They all believed that there was no life after life and stuff like that. And we had heard about near-death experiences and things, and we just thought those were some kind of hallucination that people had, in the dying process to somehow escape the horror and the pain of dying, whatever. But we didn't believe in life after that. So when I had my near-death experience, I couldn't have been more surprised. It went through my mind, this isn't supposed to be happening. But the interesting thing about the near-death experience, and you'll hear this from many NDEers, is it's more real than this reality. So it's pretty hard to deny. We think our reality of the 5 senses is reality. Well, there's another reality that's a lot more intense. I could talk about that a lot, but I don't want to go into that right now. I'm going to just continue with my story. So in my near-death experience, first I went to hell, and there I was subjected to the torment and horror and the pain of hell, which forced me into what I can only describe as the pit of despair, utter despair, because I thought I was stuck there forever. And a voice spoke to me. I don't know where it came from or who it was. I tend to think it was God or Jesus, but anyways, it said, pray to God. And when I prayed to God, the people that had been tearing me apart stopped and literally ran away from me because they could not hear the voice of God, and they were telling me that there is no God, nobody can hear me, and they were going to do worse things to me if I didn't stop. But because they were literally running away from me, I knew that there was a power praying against them. And anyway, so they left me alone, and in that place, I went even deeper into the pit of despair, not knowing what to do. And the memory of being in Sunday school when I was a little boy and singing Jesus Loves Me came to me. But more importantly than the Sunday school or the song was that the faith and the hope that I'd had in Jesus as a boy came back to me. And I called out into the darkness, Jesus, please save me. And to my complete surprise, he came. He made me whole. He filled me with his love. And he carried me out of that place and took me up to the outsides of heaven. Outside of heaven, Jesus and I conversed. I really like him. He's funny. Jesus is funny. You hear me? He's got a great sense of humor. He likes to laugh a lot. He thinks I'm funny. And anybody that thinks I'm funny, I'm going to like them a lot. You know, my sense of humor is pretty dry, and most people don't get it. Anyways, he called forth a group of angels, and they gave me a life review, which started off pretty fun as a child, and then as I became an adolescent and an atheist, and then my career and stuff, it was very painful because I saw how cruel and indifferent I had been to other people. And many times during the life review, I begged Jesus to stop it, and he said, no, you need to watch this. You need to see what you did to other people, because in your life review, you actually get to see and feel what you've done to other people. Anyways, when the life review was over, he said, do you have any questions? And I said, I've got a million questions. And he said, ask me whatever you want. So I asked him everything that I could think of. I don't think it was a million questions, but it was clearly 1,000 or more questions I asked him. Everything I asked him, he answered. He took me places. He showed me things. The kindest, most patient teacher I have ever experienced in my life. And then he gave me the bad news that I had to come back to this world and I could not go to heaven. So he and I had a big argument, and I argued for a long time about not sending me back to this world. And he defeated my arguments rationally, kindly. And finally, I agreed to come back. And when I came back, I was back. I had the surgery shortly after that I'd been waiting over 10 hours for. And the next day when I woke up, I knew that the most important thing in my life had happened to me. And of course, as Christians, you all know the expression born again. Well, I knew that I had been born again.
Yeah.
And the problem was, what am I going to do about it? So I was thinking, okay, the booze is out, got to quit the cigarettes, no more cussing, blasphemy is out. I mean, I started all the bad things that I did. But the most important thing Jesus told me was to love the person that you're with. That, to me, that was the single most important thing that he literally commanded me to do, coming back to the world. And so my near-death experience was almost 40 years ago.
Wow.
And for the past 40 years, I have been working on being a loving person to everyone, and including people that I don't like, right? I mean, you may not believe it. I even love Ade. I mean,
there is a miracle there. There's definitely
a miracle
there. Howard, you're the first person that we've met that actually said that and sounded convincing.
I'm sorry?
Howard, you're the first person that said that and actually convincing. And you even sound convincing.
Well, okay. When Ade forms a fan club, I'll sign up.
Wow.
No, you know I love Ade. I mean that sincerely. And I believe Ade loves me too.
I sure do.
Anyways, after this experience, I was in the hospital for months. The French surgeon had given me sepsis. You know what sepsis is? Infection in the body. And hospitals don't like to admit it, but more people die from sepsis in American hospitals than any other single cause. Anyways, it's bad. So that's why I was in the hospital for months. And during that time, everyone, without exception, they'd come in the room and I'd say, do you believe in Jesus? Do you love God? If you don't, if you don't know Jesus, you're going to go to hell. Hell is terrible. You know, heaven's beautiful. You want to go to heaven, you got to know Jesus. So anyways, that people would run out of my room, doctors, nurses, orderlies, cleaning ladies, because, you know, I mean, here's this guy lying in bed. I'm so sick, you know, my eyes are yellow, my skin's, you know, jaundiced, and, you know, I can't move. I can't even lift my head off the pillow. I'm so sick. And hearing him, you know, you got to love Jesus. You know, it didn't go over very well. And when I tried it with my family, it was a disaster. So after I got out of the hospital, I learned after a while, since I was literally alienating everybody with my zealotry, I stopped. And I kept reading the Bible and reading theology and stuff like that, but I stopped talking about it. I just went silent because nobody wanted to hear it. And then two things happened. One is I had a nun as a student earlier times, and we'd kept up a bit of a friendship. And so I invited her over, and she asked me what happened. So I spent a couple hours telling her, and she believed me 100%. And the other thing was that an old friend of mine, at their home, they were Catholics. They had a Bible study with a priest, and they invited me to come to the Bible study. I went to the Bible study, and they invited me to tell my story. So I spent a couple hours telling them my story, and they liked it. They believed me. The priest believed it. And so it dawned on me, you know, there are people. There really are people, you know, who are interested in this stuff. I started going to a church close to my home, which was the denomination that I had grown up in. And the other thing that happened was in the US, I think they have it in England too, IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies. Do you have that?
No, I don't think we have it here. No.
Okay. Well, anyways, I started going to an IANS meeting in Cincinnati, not far from my home. And of course, they wanted to hear my testimony. So I did find that there is a segment of the population that you can talk about these things with, and they won't laugh at you and tell you you're crazy and you need to go to a psychiatrist, get your head straightened out, which is, I was told many times in the hospital, by the way. So at the church, I became passionately involved. I had gone back to work at the university as a department head and an art professor, but now I was torn because I was divided between working at the church and my easy, cushy job as a professor. And I became ordained at that church as a lay minister, which meant that I visited the sick and shut-in, serving the community and stuff. And I loved doing that kind of thing. And there were a lot of things about the university that I didn't like, particularly the prevailing atheism of the faculty and administrators. Not all of them, I'm just saying prevailing, dominant. And so I had to make a decision because I really felt like I was called into the ministry. I wanted to become a full-time ordained pastor. And so I had to leave my job at the university, which paid a very nice salary and benefits and stuff, and very secure and not that hard a job to do after the many years that I'd been there. Anyways, so I went to seminary for 3.5 years, and I loved seminary. And I mean this sincerely. If I could have stayed in seminary for the rest of my life, I would. The only problem was it was very expensive and I wasn't making any income. That was bad. So anyways, I became, as in seminary, we had to be student pastors places. So I student pastored different churches. And at the end, I was ordained and became a full-time pastor of a small church in Cincinnati. And I pastored for about 30 years. I pastored at 6 different churches. and it was great. But when I got into my early 70s, I felt that I really couldn't do it anymore for health reasons. And so I retired from pastoring. So that's it.
Wow.
I tried to give you, a brief sketch.
It's fascinating all the same. I mean, as we started off on that, we've heard it before, but hearing you tell it and speaking to you, it's an incredible experience, an incredible testimony.
Yeah,
And then thank you for sharing it with us.
thanks. And the way I see it is, it was all grace. It was all a gift. And so it wasn't really anything that I did.
Mm.
It was a gift from God that I was given. And so the only way I could pay God back is by giving my testimony and serving the church and evangelizing. I mean, that's all I know how to do. So that's what I do.
I totally agree with Pete. There's something completely different, Howard. I've looked at your testimonies online because you questioned whether Ade might love you earlier, and he really does. I really want to say something jokey about him, but my goodness me, he is really enjoying the relationship he has with you at the moment. So,
yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And we do joke that nobody likes Ade here. He has got one friend, I think, but there's so many things you've just said to me that are sort of bouncing around in my head. But I'm very intrigued. You talk about love a lot. And I'm a really simple sort of guy. I can only really think about the things that are happening to me at any one time, and that's how I experience life.
Yeah.
Unlike Pete, who's got the brains to maneuver throughout the whole spectrum. But I've recently had my heart slightly smashed to smithereens. And the thing that I have found from that is that God has sort of been putting my heart back together, and it's got big. And the thing that interests me that you seem to talk about love, and I'm not trying to talk about myself, but you're talking about love as the main ingredient, the thing which really it all boils down to. Would I be right, or am I slightly over egging the point?
What was the very last thing that you said?
As far as I can work out from some what you've said on some of your podcasts in the past, but also just from listening to you now, is that love has that the whole sort of nature of love has become a real key, I suppose, pillar in your life, and definitely the way you speak.
Yes.
And it's almost like it seems to me that it is the be and end all of the whole. I was just wondering, is that the case, or have I slightly misheard you on that?
No, you're absolutely right. But the difficult thing about love is, how do you express it? Now, along with love, there needs to be discernment. Like, for example, I have been conned and abused and taken advantage of by many people. Trust me, I'm not proud of that. I'm not bragging. I'm confessing, because I didn't really do the work of discerning what was really behind them. Okay. Loving appropriately. Let me give you an extreme example. I've done some jail ministry, and the last one that I did, and this was just before COVID happened, was a team of us went to the jail in Ohio, where all the worst prisoners are sent. 1,500 prisoners. They all live in solitary confinement. And basically the only privilege they have is they are allowed to have TV according to what they're willing to pay for it. Now, these men have to qualify for this prison, all have to have been convicted of a felony while in jail. Okay, so they're not just in jail for what they did when they were caught. They're convicted of a felony while in jail. So these are, I think most people would say these are pretty bad boys, right? Well, we spent a week with them, Monday through Friday, about 8 or 10 hours a day, talking with them, praying with them, singing with them. And I was terrified when I went there. I mean, just being really honest, going into this place, I was practically shaking. Like, am I going to get stabbed? Am I going to get beaten up? I mean, these are dangerous felons.
Yeah.
And on the day that we left, Friday evening, individually, each one of the guys, we got up and hugged and kissed each other on the cheek and told each other that we loved one another, because their bad behavior as we talked was so much a part of the culture that they grew up in. I mean, I could elaborate, but I'll just leave it at that. Inside of these men were just guys looking for love, like everybody else in the world. They just were looking for love. But the problem is, they had found very inappropriate ways to try and seek love and support and status in the basically criminal environments that they grew up in. They were good men. Do I want them to be released from prison? No, not now. When their sentence is served, yeah. Would I like the prison to have better rehabilitation programs? Absolutely, yes. At the place they were at, there was no rehabilitation at all. Didn't exist, and that's practically criminal. Put a criminal in prison and not give them any kind of rehab. It's just terrible. But anyways, the bottom line is, when you get to know people, I'm sure there are instances, but most people really have a lot of good and a lot of love inside of them. The problem is our culture, which doesn't teach love. The United States of America is not a Christian country, although people say it is. It's not true at all. It's a secular culture devoted to materialism, devoted to wealth, acquisition of money, power. And myself and many people that I know, and they all happen to be Christians, we all feel that this country is in danger of utter collapse because of its secular material culture, which is becoming bestial. I don't know how the politics are going in the UK, but in the United States, the politics are divided up between the right and the left, and they hate each other and they don't cooperate with each other, and they simply yell and insult one another. It's no way to run a country. There's no consensus. There's no compromise. There's no agreement. I don't know what's going to happen to the country that I live in. Is it that way in the UK?
I think people would say yes. I mean, if you listen to what's going on in our parliament, the sense, a feeling that people just disagree with each other on principle rather than go, yeah, that's a good idea. So there's this sort of one-upmanship, and as you said, this constant argument. And I'd also agree with, I think we would probably fit into the same category as you talked about, of materialism. and secularism. I think very
Let me
much.
just to try and illustrate my point. The United States of America is the only developed country in the world that does not have universal health care. You know that, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And the health care that we have now, which affects the majority of the population, but there's a huge segment of the population that doesn't have any health care, is debated all the time. And the current administration is threatening to eliminate some of the health care benefits that exist in this country. So I mean, can you imagine a developed country that doesn't have universal health care? Well, think of the United States of America, 330 million people, and there's tens of millions without access to health care.
It's
I could go on and on, but I'll stop there.
I mean, if you don't mind going a bit more, well, a little bit longer on politics, it's interesting because um, I've heard the argument that democracy is the best system of government that humanity was able to come up with. But I've also heard it described as democracy being the art of delaying a decision until everyone is upset. Um, and so I find it interesting because as part of your testimony, and thank you again for that sort of overview of your testimony, but you spoke of in your, whilst you were asking Christ all these questions and the things he was showing you, one of the things you asked of was or one of the things you described was a society so far advanced
Yes.
and so in tune with the environment and with, treating the planet better, treating each other better
Yes.
and describing really a utopia that
Yes.
would come about. What would you, how would you describe that sort of, or a government that can usher that in? Or well, as being as one of the possible futures of humanity, we probably see that. But what would you describe as a government that can sort of bring that into being? What would that government be like?
Well, first of all, I don't think the government is ever going to do that.
Fair.
I think the people are going to do that.
Right.
But what is going to govern people? So I'm using the word government in a different sense. What's going to govern is when everybody in the world has the Spirit, what we call the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of God in their hearts and in their minds. That's what's going to govern the world. That's what governed that, as you said, utopian world in the future. So, as a Christian, our duty as a Christian is to evangelize Christianity. But what I read is there's about 3 billion so-called Christians in the world. And as a pastor, I say so-called Christians because we all know that there's some Christians that are more Christian than others and some less. Anyways, 3 billion Christians in the world, and we have a world population of 8 billion. What will it take? Well, there's a lot of people, and I don't know if I agree with them or not, that someday Jesus Christ is going to come back in the sky and he's going to winnow out the good and the bad. And after that, we will have heaven on earth. On the one hand, I say, Maranatha, Maranatha, Lord Jesus, come. Lord Jesus, come. How about this afternoon? If not this afternoon, what are you doing tomorrow? Are you available? I would love Jesus to come back and make this world right and eliminate all evil. Will that happen? When it'll happen? I don't know. And to the best of my understanding from the scriptures And from history is nobody knows. You know, there's been hundreds of people that have predicted the day and the time and the place when Jesus was going to appear.
Yeah.
This has happened hundreds of times in the last 2,000 years. And they've always been disappointed because he never showed up. So only a con artist or a fool would say, oh, I know the day and the time when Jesus is coming. But I know lots of people are still doing that.
Yeah.
But my hope is that perhaps that'll happen and Jesus will just come and make everything right. But until that happens, our job as Christians is to do the best we can to bring the Spirit of Christ into the hearts and the minds of the people that we can affect. And that's basically what I'm trying to do. Because of I'm 78 years old, and I have an amputated leg, and I'm totally blind. I can't go out and give talks anymore. I can't travel anymore. But the one thing I can do is work on books. And with the help of Kratos Publishing, those books are happening. Getting the word out that way. And the amazing thing about it is that they actually do get read, and I get emails and phone calls from all over the world of people who have been impressed by those books, and people tell me it's changed their life and stuff like that. So that's exceedingly gratifying to know that I am having some effect with my writing.
I think that's extraordinarily exciting. I don't know whether I'm allowed to ask you such a personal question, but having, and I'm going to give myself a slight caveat if you don't mind, but I lost my son last year to suicide. And so I now find myself asking people poignant questions just because why not? Because there's only ever one opportunity. But I mean, how do you find, because I know the blindness is only something which is very recent. How do you reconcile that with God? Do you find that he's just, you feel the love and it's do you know what I mean? Do you feel cross about it, or are you feeling his embrace of love? It is a very personal question.
I mean, losing my eyesight is awful. I mean, I can't describe how awful it is. It's terrible. Worst thing that's ever happened to me. But I don't believe that God did it. I believe that God is good, and God doesn't, do bad things to people. I believe that other fellow, the guy that hates God a lot, known as the devil, Lucifer, Satan, whatever, that he's responsible for it. My job is to stay strong in my faith with God and with Christ, and to live life to the best of my ability, given my circumstances. And I'm going to tell you something that's a real miracle in my life. I have been twice divorced. My first marriage was 40 years. My second marriage was 17 years. Both of those wives got tired of me and my evangelism and all that stuff. And I'm not the easiest person to live with, because I'm very strong-willed about what I'm trying to do with my life. And a pastor introduced me to a woman 2 years ago, and we met, we fell in love, got married, and I tell everyone that she was sent by God, because she's a very strong Christian. She 100%s me and what I'm trying to do in my evangelism, and she takes incredible care of me. And she's just such a godsend. And I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing without her, but it would not be good. Her name is Joy. Joy.
Brilliant.
It's
Fantastic.
it's incredible because she is my Joy. She's my joy. It's her name.
Amazing. That's lovely. Yeah.
So, before my amputation and my blindness, we were married. We had some good times together, and then these things happen. And she's been with me 100% and supports me and loves me and cares for me. And I believe that is one of the ways that God has tried to care for me through this person.
Which
That's amazing.
sounds like a whole lot more than a silver lining. It sounds like a sort of gold and emerald and diamond lining to this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's extraordinary. We'll definitely be praying for joy on both types of joy, your wife and the actual meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I was going to ask, because you mentioned part of your job is to stay strong in the faith despite these things that have happened. It might sound like a silly question, but do you think having the experience and the testimony that you have, do you find that helps? Is it easier to have faith when you've experienced that, when you've seen Christ face to face, or do you think um, that's like is human nature? We find it easier to become used to things. And is there any
Well,
part of you that gets used to the idea that you've had that?
no, I think having faith in Jesus Christ really does help you get through these things. Let me illustrate this. I was at a hospital when my leg was amputated. I was at a hospital for 3 months. Most of that time was in rehab at the hospital. Very nice hospital, lots of good people. And while I was at that hospital, there were many days when I was experiencing very severe pain, mind-numbing pain. And I wanted to be, for the people that were caring for me, I wanted to be loving and kind and fun to be with. So I would make up all kinds of terrible jokes and I would laugh and they would ask me how I'm doing. And I'm saying, oh, I'm great. I'm fine. I'm wonderful. Meanwhile, my body's screaming at me. And the day that I was released from the hospital, about 36 people came to my room, doctors, nurses, cleaning ladies, attendants, the whole gamut of people that I had encountered, and told me how much fun it was being with me and how much they appreciated my good humor. So, it was quite overwhelming. And I asked some nurses, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me that you appreciated me? And they said, because you're the rare exception. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, most of the patients we see are grouchy and cranky, and there's a fair number of them that are outright mean and nasty. She said, it was so refreshing to see you because you were unlike the other patients in the hospital. So I think that answers the question. The difference was I wanted to be loving to them. They were caring for me, and the only thing that I could give back as a patient was to have good spirits and to try and be happy and try and be jovial.
Yeah, that's a common it's a common story for nurses and people that work in care. My mum works in care. My wife is a pharmacist, and it's sad how you are trying to save someone's life or care for someone, and the vast majority of them just get abuse back or get, it's a tough position to be in. So I can imagine they would appreciate someone that's, you know, trying to bring joy to
Yeah.
the situation. That's amazing.
I don't take this seriously, but it it makes me angry that people would mistreat their caregivers.
Yeah.
How dare you mistreat these people?
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. Howard, I was going to ask, and this, I don't want to sound morbid, but you've having a near-death experience and visiting hell, visiting, being with Christ, hearing him. I imagine, and I think in one of your interviews, you said verbatim, you're ready to go back whenever, just
Oh
to
yeah,
go back and be with God. Um,
take me, Lord.
I was gonna say 40 years after the fact, is that still the case, or is it more, Paul was like, to die is gain, but to live is Christ. Is it you're here and you're gonna carry on until God calls you back, or is it, yeah, I'm ready to go?
Um, I'm ready to go anytime, but after my near-death experience, all I wanted to do was to die and go back to
Mm,
be with Jesus and go to heaven.
mm,
That's all I wanted. I talked to other near-death experiences, and we all agreed that when you have a near-death experience, you have a almost terminal case of homesickness because
wow.
um, we
What a
we
way to put it.
we referred to
Hmm.
heaven as home,
Yeah. Yeah.
because this world, it may seem like home, but it's not really our home because we're just here for a little time to grow and develop, and then we either go to heaven or we don't.
Mm,
Uh, I it took me actually a few years to get over that yearning to die and go to heaven. And of course, obviously, I could do something to make me die, but I knew that that would not be pleasing to God. So I didn't. I tried to get healthier.
mm,
Um, and um, as long as God has me in this world, I'm going to keep doing my best. Right now, my wife and I moved a few months ago into a residential community of 464 people, the largest residential community in the United States. It's all for the elderly.
mm.
Um, every week in this community, someone's died, sometimes two and three. And death is not a mystery around here. It's like
Mm. Wow.
weekly occurrence. Um,
Mm,
and so many of these people are good Christians and wonderful people. We have an Episcopal worship service on Friday morning, which my wife and I attend to. We were there this morning with Eucharist, and then on Sunday afternoon at 2:30, we have, which is pretty much a Methodist worship, which my wife and I attend every Sunday. But one of the highlights of our day is every day of the week we go up to the dining hall and have dinner with people, always meeting new people, and just to put it simply, some of the people are kind of boring and not too interesting. And some of the people are absolutely fascinating and wonderful. And both my wife and I both agree we want to make those people our best friends. It's a big community to explore and to make relationships with. And we get really good care here and feel very safe and secure. So it's interesting because, in my near-death experience, as you referred to earlier, Jesus took me to a place in the future of community, and um, right now, my wife and I in a community that is not that far from what I was shown in heaven.
wow.
People
Wow.
that just love and support one another.
Yeah, for
There's no
another.
friction up here. There's no
Mm,
fighting. There's no
mm.
anger. Um, it's it's really it's kind of heaven on earth, frankly.
Wow.
The only problem is we're all old and in the process of waiting to die.
Oh no, Howard, you can't.
Uh, you know, and we even laugh about it, you know.
Good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I haven't met a single person yet that fears dying. We all think, well, I'm gonna die. You know,
Yeah.
I'm 88 years old. I'm gonna die. Okay. No, I mean I'm not 88. I'm 70. But
Yeah. No, it is I mean, it's the cliche to say dying is going to a better place. But then I
yeah,
think for the Christian, recognizing dying is going to be in the presence of your Father.
yes,
You can't help but think, well, that is a better place. That's an amazing place. And for you to have experienced that, that's powerful. I think it's interesting because your descriptions and your recounting of it seems like you really, it's almost as if you remember it very clearly. And I want to ask just your sensation of time, because in one of your
oh,
interviews, yeah, you speak about having learnt more than you did in the 3 years of your university in the
yes,
time that you were with Christ. And so
yeah, and
I think it sounds to me as though you almost were in eternity with Christ. And I just
exactly.
wonder what your sensation of time is there compared to
Oh,
here, if you can give any description to that at all.
it became very the the lack of linear time. We
Mm,
in this world live in linear time, which
yeah,
means we live moment to moment by moment. You know,
yeah,
it's 3:42 in 60 seconds. It'll be, 3:43, then it's going to be
yeah,
3:44. That's how we live in this world.
yeah,
Um, not necessarily everybody. Tribal people don't necessarily count
mm,
time exactly the same way that the developed people do. But
mm,
anyways, in heaven, past, present, and future are one.
mm,
They're all one. But the main thing about heaven is everybody in heaven is living in the present. And that's an extraordinary thing because in this world, if you even think about living in the present, it becomes the past. Like that, bang,
immediately, yes, yeah,
immediately. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes you can meditate and kind of lose your sense of time.
yeah,
And that's um, kind of similar to being timeless,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Um, in extreme situations like a car accident, it's very common for people to talk about like, whoa,
everything
everything
slows down,
slowed
yeah,
down, and
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
things that took seconds to happen feel like they took minutes or more to happen. So
mm,
there's another distortion of our perception of time. But in
mm,
heaven, it's all right now.
right, yeah,
And um, when I said that the past and the future, because heaven is God,
mm,
heaven is 100% God. Now, the very God of God is in the center of heaven.
mm,
Okay. If you want, the person of God is in the center of heaven.
mm,
But heaven exists because it's all made out of God's love. Matter of fact,
mm,
this world is made out of God's love, but it seems very, very far away. I mean, how often has all of us, I mean, everyone in this world has said, God, where are you? Where are you in this?
mm,
This can't be happening. This is terrible. Um, this world was made by God. We were made by God. Everything in this world was made by God. But in heaven, everything lives and breathes God's love.
mm,
It's so hard to describe. Um, People talk about in heaven, the grass sings the praises of God. It does. It really does. I mean, the oceans, the sky, everything is you know, um, a manifestation of God's love.
mm,
Everything,
mm.
and
And you, oh,
that's what
sorry,
we're here
yeah,
to learn
yeah,
and to live.
yeah,
Um, One of the ways that I put it is Homo sapiens came into existence, what, 200,000 years ago or whatever, you know,
mm,
the species Homo sapien came into being Jesus Christ came into the world 2,000 years ago to evolve us into human beings. Or I will put a different definition to what a true human being is: a child of God who knows that they're a child of God. I was talking to a Mennonite woman at a retreat one time, and I said to her, "I'm no saint." And she said, "Are you beloved by God, and do you know him?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm beloved by God, and I know that." And she said, "You're a saint." She said, "That's what a saint is." And that struck me as very profoundly, because there are people in our churches that I have had the great benefit of knowing who are really saintly people. And if you were asked me what makes them saintly people, I guess I'd just rely on what that Mennonite woman told me. Beloved by God, and they know it. So I'm not asking you guys to call me a saint, but
Saint Howard.
please don't call me a saint. I don't know if I can live up to it.
I think Saint Storm has a good ring about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You know what? Honestly, I never thought of it, but actually, that's not so bad.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, I feel like I'm very new to podcasting, and this is why I'm not very good, because the more I listen to you, the more excited I get. I'm like a dog. If you could see me, you'd probably see my tail wagging, and I find myself excited. Because all I want to do is run around and bark.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm ever going to do very well at this podcasting, because I find this tremendously exciting.
Well, isn't it amazing? Because Teilhard de Chardin anticipated the world coming together. He called it the new sphere, where the world would have a global mind. I don't know if you're familiar with Teilhard de Chardin, but anyways, he's a French theologian in the last century. Anyhow, with the internet and like the thing that we're doing right now, it's coming about. I mean, think about it. I mean, I was born in 46, and we had a party line telephone. Do you know what a party line telephone is?
No.
Um,
No.
lots of people on the same line, and when the phone rang, and if you picked it up, it wouldn't be for you, it'd be for somebody else on the line. There were a whole bunch of people on the same line. We were not allowed to make long distance calls because they were way expensive. I remember when pocket calculators came out, and we thought those were the greatest things in the world. You could have a little calculator in your pocket instead of my grandfather's great big old adding machine with the pull thing. Now I'm in Kentucky. You're somewhere in Great Britain.
Yeah.
And we're looking at each other, except I'm not seeing anything, but we're looking at each other and we're talking as if we were practically in the same room.
Yeah.
And I've had this experience with people all over the world, and it's just incredible. The world is really becoming, hopefully, a global village. The only problem is, will people wake up and have the wisdom and the spiritual development to live what this global village is ultimately supposed to be, which is a world of harmony. And as you alluded to earlier, a world where we have a much greater respect for nature, because I think we can all agree that we're literally doing terrible things to this planet.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. It's really interesting talking about the internet a little bit, because as you rightly said, it's in many ways resulted in what feels like a very, very, very small world. Being able to speak to you directly across thousands of miles. But with that, it seems the information that's afforded to us by the internet is being used to divide us rather than
Oh,
bring us together.
um, well, I couldn't agree with you more. I have a good friend, and he's all into conspiracy theories, and he gets all of his information from the internet because truly, and I think you'll agree with me, anything you want to assert or dispute, you can find
Oh
something
yeah,
on the internet to agree with
yeah,
you. I mean,
yes, yeah.
I had a Canadian friend, and for a while he was into the flat Earth thing. I
Mm,
was like, seriously? You know, I mean, I tried to talk to him. I said, I know you've taken a lot of plane trips from Canada to California to visit your family.
mm,
When you were in the plane, did you ever notice the curvature of the Earth? You,
yeah.
um, you know, have you ever heard of anybody in an airplane falling off the edge? I
Mm,
mean, I don't know. He just disputed all those things. But anyways, you're right. The internet is full of um, evil. I mean, just
yeah,
let's call it what it is. It's just
yeah,
evil.
yeah, yeah. I think it's even scarier almost because I mean you speak of I love the illustration of the party line because we can see a clear sort of progression of technology going from that to what's now the internet. But I think we're heading to a new sort of a new frontier in that everything thus far has been there's a human being on the other end of the line, just
Right.
for lack of a better way of saying it. So even on the internet, when I'm looking at a flat earth theory online, I can trust there's another person that's written that and put that on there. I'd
Oh,
be curious to hear your perspective on AI and now
oh,
where we're going to a
I knew that
place.
was. Well, let me tell you, I heard a very interesting interview. I cannot remember the name of the scientist, but he is an American scientist. That's one of the top scientists credited with the development of AI.
Mhm.
And what he said was, um, and I was delighted and surprised to hear this. He said AI is much overrated, and it's not going to take over the world, and it's not going to be as powerful as people think. Now, um, I was happy to hear that because there's the richest man in the world, by the way, is Elon Musk. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've heard of him.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and he's worth, well, I think what I heard, $400 billion. Well, anyways, he's real into AI, and he's very into the idea of implanting AI into people's heads.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, he justifies this because it can help people who are paralytics and things. None of this has been proven. This is just his speculation. AI can help people when we put these implants in people's heads. And to me, um, I'm sure you Brits know about an author by the name of George Orwell,
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
1984.
Yeah, we do.
Um, if good old George Orwell were alive today, um, what kind of a 2084 book would he write?
Mhm.
Well, I'm sure one of the things that if he were writing today, he would talk about we would all be implanted with little things that tell us, oh, this is lovely, this is good, you know,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and just try and control our behavior. I mean, the idea of AI implanted into people's brains is really scary and really evil. But if this man who developed AI is right, it's greatly overrated.
Mhm.
You know, my pastor is a real techno freak.
Mhm.
He's asked AI, he's given the AI a subject and asked it to write a sermon, and it does, kind of a respectable job of writing a sermon. Just with
Yeah.
give it a theme and it will give you like a 3-page sermon,
Yeah.
um, which is pretty remarkable.
Mhm.
Uh, but my experience with AI is, I don't know if you have this problem in England. You call up a company to resolve some kind of problem,
Yeah.
and you get the AI.
Yeah.
AI is the stupidest. most frustrating thing in the world. I can't do those calls. I have my wife do them because I get so angry. I just have to hang up. So
Yeah,
my personal experience with AI has been it's really dumb.
yeah, yeah. I am inclined to agree with the scientists on where it is now. Definitely is highly overrated
Yeah,
and over publicized. I think what's very interesting is, and speaking on the progression of technology, we're seeing it miniaturized. And as it's being miniaturized, it's getting closer and closer physically to the human body. So, you speak of the calculators that had a lever and were there, and now you've got effectively super powerful computers in your phone, in your
yeah,
pocket, and then what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink and stuff like that. With sort of the apparent amalgamation of technology and human, do you see what do you think about that? Do you think that presents anything we should be really concerned with actually introducing technology into
well,
our bodies?
um, yes and no. I want to instead of talking about AI, I want to talk about something that's even more pervasive: money. Okay,
Mm, mm,
money is a tool. My goal in life is to have enough money to pay the bills for my wife and I for the rest of our life.
mm,
And I think we're going to be able to do that. I don't want to run out of money.
yeah.
My life has never been and never will be about, I want money, I need more money, give me money, what can I do for money? It's
Mm,
never, I don't worship money, it's just a tool.
yeah.
I love tools. And
Mm,
before my blindness, I had a lot of tools. I gave all my tools away. But if you'd come down into my workshop, you would have said, and many people said this to me, man, you've got every tool in the world. And I go, yeah, I'm a tool whore. What can I say? I love tools. Money's a tool. Okay.
yeah.
Now, my point is that the computers, the AI, all this stuff, there's tools. They can
Tools.
be misused.
Yeah.
They can be used for evil purposes.
Mm,
But hopefully, human beings will have the wisdom to use them in appropriate ways. Um,
mm,
I, I'll give you asked about it. You brought up this topic. So, um, when I was learning to walk, I was given a very dumb um, prosthesis, artificial leg.
right.
My amputation is above the knee, so my prosthesis had a knee joint that did nothing but flip flop forwards and backs.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
I could move my lower leg forward by pushing my thigh forward. I could bring the knee back by bringing my thigh back. You know, it it had um, it had a hinge. Okay,
Yeah.
and they told me that if I progressed in my development of using a prosthesis, they would give me a prosthesis with an electronic brain in it that would know what to do.
Mm,
Um, because of my blindness, I have not um, been using my artificial leg and don't have any hope of being able to walk because I'm blind. I don't know where I'm going. Um, but for a long while there, I was really excited about getting an artificial leg with a brain. You know,
mm, mm,
I don't know how good that brain was. That could have probably been pretty much an exaggeration, but it sure would have been better than my dumb prosthesis with the hinge.
Mm. Well, do you know, Howard, I'm a little jealous of that because I've got a rather usual walk that I got duck feet, so they face inwards. So I would love an intelligent leg that would make my feet walk in a straight line.
Well, maybe we can get you an implant to turn your feet out.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you ever decide you don't want the implant anymore, just send it over here and I'll shove it into my knee and see what happens.
Yeah, I bet you there's a surgeon in the United States that could straighten out your walk.
Yes. It's not too bad. I used to be in the
Yeah,
army. The soldiers, my boys, used to find it funny that I couldn't quite walk in straight lines. But
yeah.
luckily, I was in the cavalry, so I either had a horse or a tank.
Oh, oh. I'm sure that your feet turned into worked good in the cavalry because that kept you better in the stirrups.
So you're obviously a riding man, because if you didn't ride a horse, you wouldn't know that. They are ideal for my stirrups because, of course, your toes were pointing forward perfectly. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You're obviously a riding man, Howard.
Well, I've done a little riding. Yeah,
Yeah, gosh, yes, I've loved time in the saddle. I
yeah.
don't know how long we're allowed to have you. I noticed that Ade came on the screen briefly and went off, and I didn't know whether that was warning Pete and I that we can't keep you for the next 24 hours.
I don't know. I guess Addy will blow the whistle when he thinks it's time's up.
Keep going, keep going.
Well, I feel that we've
Oh,
been cheated because you've spoken very wisely. Howard, there's no doubt you've got me zinging on all angles, but fundamentally, you haven't answered the main question really, which was
yes,
the only
fire.
reason the only reason we really wanted to do this was to find out what your favorite food is. But you've been talking about other stuff. The only reason we did this interview, Howard, is because actually we wanted to know what your favorite food was.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm afraid to say this. I'm a
no.
chocoholic. I love chocolate, and I especially love it combined with coconut. If you want me to dance around, give me a little candy bar covered with dark chocolate and with coconut inside. That's my favorite.
So we have a chocolate called the Bounty, which is basically which is a dark chocolate covered with a sort of a sugary coconut mixture in the middle, and it is quite good. Well,
yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah.
Does candy count as food?
I think
Favorite thing to eat, yeah.
I think it could be an extra on top of. I think you could have your favorite food and then finish it off with candy. So it's almost a bonus.
Yeah.
Well, okay, then I'll step back down to the entree. Medium rare prime rib.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, you're talking to the converted here. Not only have we got a couple of Christian boys, but you've got a couple of boys who like their meat too.
The problem in the U.S. is that beef prices are going through the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
You know, if you went to a grocer to get a prime rib now, you'd probably be paying something around $25 a pound. And I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that is.
That is a lot, but we pay quite a lot for our meat anyway. Everything's expensive here.
And here, if you want to hear something really startling, I was listening to an audio book, and they were talking about climate change. And this is what they said. And so, but I think they were pretty credible people. So I'm just quoting what they said, that humans contribute about 2% of the carbon dioxide to the climate, 2%. They said the biggest contributor to carbon dioxide and to methane are cattle. And they said, if you really want to do something about climate change, we need to slow down and cut way back on cattle production. Well, that really hurt because I love beef. I'm a hamburger fanatic, you know. That was really scary to think that cattle produce far more carbon dioxide and methane than any other source in the world.
It is. It's extraordinary, isn't it? But I suppose if we wanted to put a different PR spin on that, we could say that we now need to eat more steak to get rid of them.
I love your solution.
Yes, I don't think I'll be joining the UN in the near future.
Yeah.
No, I think that's yeah. It's at the risk of offending you, Howard. I like my steak well done.
Oh, okay.
I know that
Well,
breaks
I was a
Philip's heart.
server. I was a server in a restaurant,
Yeah.
and you know, when I'd ask people how they would like their meat cooked, you know, I got the whole range of being. I was like, fine, whatever floats your boat. But
Yeah.
I like it bloody in the middle myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my preference breaks Pip's heart, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Howard, it is something that needs some deliverance in it's basically people with African backgrounds. They need deliverance on how they eat their meat. They basically kill the cow once and then they kill it again in the grill. I mean, Ade has his meat sort of charred on the outsides.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary. I mean, if you were wanting a prayer list for Ade, it's that he learns how to eat beef properly.
Okay. Okay.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
I'm going to get you back.
Howard, it's been an absolute pleasure, and a privilege to speak with you. I want to sort of round up on one question, which is
Yes.
with the work that you're doing, with the work you've been doing for the past 40 years. I guess it'll be interesting to hear what you'd want your legacy to be, of the people that speak of you, of the people that talk about what Howard Storm represented. What would you like your legacy to be after it's all said and done?
Um, well, thank you for the question. I actually haven't thought about it much, but off the top of my head, I would like people to say that, you know what, you told the truth.
Mm.
Um, to the best of my ability, I am transmitting what I have learned both from the mouth of Jesus Christ, from the words in the Bible of Jesus Christ, and from all the good theologians that I've read and listened to and studied. And honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I believe I am telling the truth.
Yeah.
And I am well aware that I am in a minority in the USA and in the world. And my hope and my purpose is that more people will come to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and participate in a community of like-minded people, also known as church. So that because there's real a lot more power when we work collectively as opposed to when we are work solo.
Yeah.
And there's another important thing about church that I think is underrated, that I wish everybody in the world experienced. When people ask me why go to church, my simple answer is so that you can worship God. You don't go to church to get something. You don't go to church to be entertained. You don't go to church to get status or recognition. You go to church to give God gratitude. That's called worship. And personally, I find it spiritually very uplifting to go to church and sing the hymns and say the prayers and listen to the sermons. Let me just give you a tiny example. Every Christian church that I know of, somewhere in the service, they do the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father.
Yeah.
And there is something so beautiful and so wonderful about saying that prayer in unison with a group of people. And it doesn't matter whether that group's 20 people, 100 people, or 2,000 people. Just to say the Lord's Prayer. And hopefully the people that are saying that prayer actually mean it and believe it. And that's just one tiny example of one of the great things that happen at church. As a pastor, trust me, I knew about the thing that I hated about church was all the talk about money. Money. We need more money.
Yeah.
How are we going to get more money? How are we going to spend this money? What's it? Money. the church, first and foremost, is a place for collective worship. And then secondly, and this is also important, where you are amongst a lot of people that are like-minded, where you can join together and do things. And when I say do things, I'm talking about doing things like having a free meal once a week for the poor, like having a clothing closet where people can come in and get used clothing for free or for, a tiny little nominal sum. Visiting, having groups of people that make an effort to visit the sick and shut in, and go on and on and on, all the things that you can do collectively as a group, as a member of a church. And that's the mission of the church. And of course, the big mission of the church is evangelizing by being the church, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it's a noble desire, and I think it speaks to, and you want to be known as someone that speaks the truth, but I think in having heard you, and something that Pip alluded to as well, this overwhelming sense of you've experienced and desire to give love.
Yes.
And it just cast my mind back to John chapter 13, verse 35, which is, by this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And I get that from you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's a challenge as well to be loving, because that's what we're called to.
And being loving is not, an occasional thing. It's 24/7. My biggest criticism of myself is when I fail. I'm human. Some days I'm in a crabby mood, and my wife says something to me and I snap at her and I hurt her feelings.
Yeah.
And then later on I go, oh, what an ass you are.
Yeah.
How could you do that to that sweet lady? She didn't deserve it. What is wrong with you? And then I would make a real big effort to be extra special nice later on, but I still have hurt her. I hate that. Or, you meet a stranger and you just aren't interested in them. You just kind of don't like them very much. So you don't pay any attention to them. And afterwards you think, oh, I could have done a lot better, listening and interacting with that person than I did, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. No.
I'd love to add to that. I absolutely. I mean, I defer to Pete. Pete is an extraordinary man who I love very much, and much wiser than I am. But one of the things I've really enjoyed about this meeting is there's nothing quite like talking to somebody face to face, and this is as good as it gets. Being in the UK. But what the love that exudes from you is very obvious too. But to me, what I really love is the sort of old soldier in you. And what I mean by that, you don't, I've been into war and done that. And you don't want to be going to war with somebody who's fresh skinned and just got out of training. You want the guy who's got a few scars and has got some stories and has got the humility to say, well, I've messed that up, but I've learned from it. And then you're with a proper warrior who's learned and is real. And how I'd love to say that just chatting to you, the fact that you can laugh at any moment, and at the same time you can bring up an example of where you've done something wrong but managed to overcome, and that you've got some very real scars. I mean, one of your legs is missing, but and I've got a few scars, but it's extraordinary combination. It makes it exciting, and it's wonderful to have that with the love, the softness and the toughness, and the wisdom and the joy. It's such a lovely mixture in you, and it's been such a. I mean, Ade told me it'd be a privilege, but I didn't quite believe him. But it has been a real privilege.
Well, thank you. You're too kind. You're way too kind.